and welcome to episode 2 of the Qreative Life podcast. This is a series of conversations with artists from across all disciplines, discussing how they've centered creativity in their lives. I'm your host, Amanda Quraishi, but you can call me Q. In this episode, I'll be interviewing Aly Cardinelli. He's been a professional dancer, educator, and performing arts specialist, beginning when he was a teenager. In his adult years, Aly developed his innate abilities, and he's become an accomplished witch doctor and psychic. In 2018, he founded Bear Bridge Academy, the fastest growing school of witchcraft and psychic development in the United States. Among other things, we'll discuss the connection between spirituality and creativity, and the importance of continuously evolving in both aspects throughout our lives. Welcome, Aly. It's good to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Amanda. I'm excited. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yay! So we know each other. Let's see. We take Tai Chi together, or we're in the same Tai Chi school. And
Yes.
You're obviously far more advanced than I am and have actually taught me a few things, which is awesome. But the reason why, I am having you on this show is because like the first day I saw you at Tai Chi and you were doing amazing forms. Like you looked amazing too. And you came in after I did. You started after I did. And it was just like, so like, I was like, this person is a dancer. It's clear. Like the way you move your body, the way you hold your postures and your flexibility and all of that. And when I talked to you about it afterwards, you said, yeah, that you've been a dancer basically your whole life. So, once I got to know that and then kind of, started chatting you up a little bit more, I learned that you do all kinds of creative stuff. Like you are a creative, what I would consider a creative powerhouse. So let's jump in. Aly, tell the world right now, or all 6 of my listeners, like describe your creative trajectory. Like how did you, as a young person, how did you come to this understanding that this was who you were as a person in the world? And were you encouraged? And what did those early kind of steps look like for you?
So my mother was a dancer that didn't make it. And I loved her stories about dancing. And when I was in my mid-teens, my childhood dream was to be a backup singer for Barry Manilow.
Okay, that is a dream, and I respect it enormously. Barry Manilow is the shit.
Yes, and I was like, I want to be a backup singer. And with that, I need to know how to dance, I need to know how to sing, and I probably need to also know how to play an instrument. So what takes the most amount of time is probably dancing. So I went into class, and my mother was against me going into dance at first.
Wow.
Totally against it because she failed, and she was like, I don't want that life for my children. My stepfather, however, was like, just let him take some classes. It's fine. I don't know why I gave him that accent. He definitely didn't talk like that, but he was quite encouraging. And I went into class, and it turned out that I was a child prodigy. So I started dancing at 13, and I had my first professional job at 16.
Wow. And what kind of dance did you start with?
I started with ballet, and I started with East Coast tap. And then that quickly expanded into jazz, which nowadays is broken up into other subcategories. So I did musical theater. I finished public high school. My parents, even though I was working professionally as a dancer, my parents wanted me to still have a public school education and not switch like a lot of prodigies do, where you go to homeschool and then you just test out. So I was balancing a full-time career and full-time high school my junior and senior year, where I was teaching and dancing about 25 to 30 hours a week and going to high school. I graduated at 17 and moved to New York City. I started my first dance company when I was 18. I then also studied other forms of dance. I learned West African and American African dance, which they are different. I studied modern dance, and I learned 3 forms of modern dance. And then contemporary ballet was starting to become more and more popular. I studied tango. I learned cha-cha. And by the time I was 24, I was an expert in 18 forms of dance.
Wow.
I got my degrees in voice and theater because why get it in dance when I was already an accomplished professional? So I got my degree in voice and theater and was one of five people in the nation who was a performing arts specialist because
Wow.
that was before I was 30, because I had expertise in so many different areas where I could teach dancers how to sing, singers how to act, etc., and bounce around. I, over time, was the artistic director for a healing institute, overseeing all kinds of physical modalities and those educations. And although I was talented on stage, my dream changed from performing, but still wanting to be more in the background. And so I taught and I started teaching also very young. I started teaching it at 16 and I had a full load of classes. I got certified through the Department of Education to teach English and math when I was terribly injured after performing in Cats. Then
And
also
how
got
old
my
were you at that time?
certification. I was 21.
Oh gosh, so young.
Yeah, I was very young and I had to learn how to rewalk. I was very, very injured. And I then got my teacher certification through Department of Defense contractors as well. So I have 25 years of teaching experience in various areas, which is my love. But what people don't know about my history, even though that's the Googleable stuff, is culturally the performing arts are integrated with spirituality, which is what I focus on now, not just artistically, but culturally, is as still an educator, but in old religious practices, including many witchcraft and shamanic forms.
I mean, this is you are such an like such an interesting human being. You grew up,
Thank you.
we're I mean, it's really hard to even know where to start here because you have and you're gosh, how old are you now? Can I ask you that?
Yes, I am 39.
Wow. Okay. So like your entire life has been spent pursuing, your creativity in one form or another, professionally and in the academy and in the realm of spirituality. Like it's so interesting how, a lot of us in this society, especially, and I think this is what you're speaking to, we compartmentalize, right? We compartmentalize everything. Our spirituality happens on Sunday. Our creative stuff happens when we're not working. Our work stuff is our work. Like all of our activities are very siloed. And you have found this sort of, I would say creativity is your modality for all the
Correct.
things that you do. And I find that so inspiring. And also, I think that that is actually, and maybe it's just because I'm also a creative person, but I actually feel like that is the way it's supposed to be. I feel like we're
It is.
supposed to be. Yeah.
Even my teaching approach is rooted in creativity because the old ways of teaching were rooted in storytelling, not in dictating. And so I even think, how can I teach something in a way that triggers the creative brain to process instead of the analytical brain to process when I'm working with a student? Creativity and spirituality shouldn't be its own pie piece, it should be the center where everything grows from.
Did you know, like, you kind of started your story, you entered dance school at 13, but up until that point, I mean, were you conscious of your of who you were and what kinds of talents you had, or, and I mean not just in dance but also with your spirituality, like did you know any of this? Like at what point were you aware of this, of the fact that you needed to make that your primary modality to traverse the world?
I had encouragement from my paternal grandmother in the craft. Other than that, I was only encouraged to use my brain. I excelled very well in school. I scored in the top 5% in on my ACT. I was a straight A student. So my parents wanted me to use my mind. When it came to creativity, I was discouraged until, this is going to be kind of sad. I was
Okay.
encouraged until I could be capitalized on.
Understood.
My family shifted from me being a active participant in the family to being something that was owned, which I think is common with prodigies and isn't talked about. And the sacrifice that I'm I'm very accomplished and I'm very proud of my accomplishments. But with that, there are aspects of life that I didn't get to enjoy.
Yeah.
Like I was just talking about at Halloween, a friend of mine was like, which one of the Freddy movies is your favorite? And I'm like, I haven't seen any of them. I haven't seen any of those. I haven't seen any of the Alien movies. I haven't seen them. Why? Because I was in the studio. I was learning more things. I was teaching more things. The sacrifice is really what people need to weigh when it comes to, do you want a creative life? And in most cases, I'm going to say it's absolutely worth the sacrifice. It's worth it to a point. You want to find the balance where you are not valued solely based on what you do, but you are also valued based on who you are. And a lot of creatives become a product that is dispensable, just like a used, emptied bottle of ketchup.
If you had asked me to guess what metaphor you would use, an empty bottle of ketchup would not be it. But I understand because I have thrown away many empty bottles of ketchup. Wow, I think that's like I agree, things require sacrifice, right? Especially excellence requires sacrifice. And I agree that it's often worth it. But I think the issue here is that you have to be in a place emotionally and even physically to make that choice for yourself. And often when you're a child, you're not in that position. Those choices are being made for you, or you're not, it's not clear if there is coercion where it lies. And so
That's
it ends
the
up not,
that's the part.
yeah. So it ends up
Coercion.
not being you, like your choice. You feel like it's your choice and you take responsibility for it as if it's your choice. But some things were simply not your choice. There's a book that, Jeanette McCurdy, she was on
I
that
don't.
show iCarly on the Disney
Oh,
Channel.
no, because I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, the only reason I've seen it, I'm a grown ass woman. The only reason I've seen it is because I had kids at the time that show was on TV. And so I would see it. And I have really no interest in celebrity culture or whatever, but she wrote a autobiography. It's really, actually, really well written. And it was about being a child in Hollywood and like having and being abused and like what that system is like and whatever. And when I was done reading it, I was just like, why do we keep perpetuating systems of commodifying children when it is clear that it does this damage that's lifelong? And it's so hard to check and it's so hard to monitor and to regulate. And so many young people have, been damaged and their art suffers and they suffer. And so, like, do you think it's so hard to say because you have this kid with all this talent, right? And you don't want it to go to waste. But like, where is the line there for how kids, and I mean young kids, let's say under age, 15, where is the line about like their personal agency and like what is healthy and what amount of distancing them from their peers and their peer experiences to focus on this thing is really justifiable?
I think the answer is the same answer that we have when it comes to people who need balance in their life and they add creativity to it. Performers, well, American culture is very much all or nothing sports team mentality with pretty much everything. How I was treated was my whole life needed to be this, and there was no balance outside. So, with talented performers or talented creatives, they also need to do and experience mundane life as well. They need to have that balance. Otherwise, they lose their sense of identity and become what they do. And what becomes terrible is when age, injury, life happens to a creative, they can't adapt because they have no other sense of self other than what they do. And that sentence, I am more valued than my productivity, is something
Mm-hmm.
that a performer does not comprehend.
Yeah, so I can see how like that at an early age, like that's an indoctrination almost that, you can carry through for the rest of your life. And then you begin to think that you really are a product.
Even in Tai Chi, someone said to me, when you show up and you do the forms, you inspire everyone else. And my response was, I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here because it's my practice. I'm not here to do anything for you. Because
Yeah.
again, that perpetuates that toxic, I am only valued by what I do, not who I am. I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. Tai Chi is a solo practice. You should be focused on you, and I'm focused on me. I'm not here to inspire you. That's what I do on stage.
So I think there is a difference, and this difference is very rarely made in our culture. I don't know if it's true in other cultures, but we call all performers artists. And I don't think that that's true. I think there's a huge difference between performing and artistry. And I think the best of both combine those two. But there are people whose only job is to just be a performer, to do the rote things, right? They practice, they do the same thing, they go out on stage, they do the same thing every single time. Or
Mhm.
they learn how to paint a certain way, or they learn how to write a certain way, and they just do it. They just churn it out, right? And there's nothing wrong with that if that's who you are and that satisfies you. But I think for people who are artists, and there's a whole other realm that has to be tended to. And it's actually your well, it's your primary way of finding inspiration and evolving your art and growing and innovating in your art. And you have to have space and time for that. That does not fit nicely into a, hardcore scheduled to the nth degree capitalist mindset, right? You have to have time to just fuck off and be like, I'm just going to sit here and, stare at the clouds all day and find my inspiration. And so I'm curious to know, how do you balance those two parts of yourself, or how did you in the past, and how has that evolved now for you? Where you're more like, I'm assuming that you're a lot more in touch with the artistic needs that underpin your talent and your ability to perform.
So I think because of where I grew up and how I grew up, I've always been in touch with the artistic side, even though I was physically a machine.
Yeah.
I was only a soloist. I didn't join the corps in ballet companies. I was always a soloist because I stood out artistically. I didn't blend in with everybody else. With that, it's because in indigenous culture, the beauty in all things lies in the transition from one thing to another. It's not the aspect of, it's the space in between. If we look at a tree trunk, everybody thinks that the lines are what makes it pretty, but if you just look at lines, they're just lines. It's actually the space between the lines and how the lines interact with each other that make a tree trunk pretty. And it's the same with movement. It's not about the trick, although there are performers or acrobats that they're just trick oriented. It's about the transition from one thing to another and how you get there that makes things beautiful. And that's included in words, it's included in paintings, it's included in sculptures, it's included in the beauty of dance, and especially in music. I love listening to Pink because I think she's a phenomenal artist because it's not about the notes, it's about how she gets from the notes to the notes. And that's what makes incredible artists. They're not all great singers. If you look at Prince, I sometimes joke, like Prince as a child sitting at the dining room table saying, I want to sing. I want to be a singer. And his voice isn't that great. He could do some incredible acrobatics with it, but technically it's not a great voice.
Right.
It's how he uses his voice that made him captivating and how he used his body, and it's the space in between. It's not the doing, it's what takes up the space between the doing. And I understood that very young, which launched me as a performer. It launched me as an artist. I understood that it's not about put my arm here and then put my arm here. It's how do I get from here to here? And what's the impulse like? Does it move from my shoulder? Does it move from my elbow? Does it move strong? Does it move weak? Because they're all aspects of the human condition, and artistry, the purpose of being creative is to remind us of the human condition.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautifully said. I mean, I could not agree more. Now let me ask you this. How did you handle with that awareness of this process, or at least the intuition of it? How did you handle being around, being under, being led by or taught by people who did not grasp that?
Oh,
Because not everybody
wow.
does, right? There's a lot of people out there who are in the business of creativity who do not grasp this.
Unfortunately, there are more people who are insecure with their own abilities and are willing to stifle others instead of encourage others to be better than them, knowing that creativity is not pie. There's plenty to go around.
Yeah.
That was a lot of my early years in the arts, were teachers who wanted to stifle that creativity. The reason it didn't, and there were bad days, but the reason it didn't over as an over arc is because of having access to other older performers and going, they're the master teachers. This one teacher is a blip in my life, and I'm going to learn great techniques. But the great teachers are people like Nureyev, are people like Connie Francis and Vicky Carr. They're, I mean, the artistry in their voices are magnificent. In actors like Toni Collette, they are the master teachers, watching and studying them in their artistry, because unfortunately you're going to have a lot of people who cut you down. My teaching philosophy is actually tattooed on my arm, and it's a quote from Pocahontas: if you cut it down, then you'll never know. I don't believe in telling people something is hard, and I don't believe in telling people they can't do it that way. Because what if they're a genius? And what if they discover something that the rest of us need?
Wow. Dude, as a formerly gifted child myself who can, I mean, I was certainly no prodigy, but I was definitely a standout in my youth, in my, in school and whatever. And I can tell you that, when you're a kid, standing out is not always a blessing. In fact, it's often a curse. And that it's hard enough to continue to put yourself out there and to be the weird kid, even if it's special, even if it's great, it's still weird, it's still different. And
Right?
to have adults who were also weird kids reach out and or signal to you. It's like that the It Gets Better campaign, almost, only for artistic and creative kids. This idea that, you just keep going, come along with it. It's going to be okay. These people can't define you. They can't even understand you, and that's okay. You're going to survive and you're going to thrive, and we're proof. And I absolutely believe in that power. And I could be wrong, but I think that that may be why you love teaching so much, why it's such a passion for you, is because you are able, I can tell you from my own experience being taught by you at Tai Chi, that you are an incredibly attentive and intuitive teacher. You really try to understand the other person and what they're working with before you start handing out direction, right? And that is a really rare thing. And it comes from a person who experienced sort of that blunt edge of a teacher or multiple teachers who couldn't really get them, and who try to force you into a certain way of doing things or a certain way of understanding things, because that's what they know, and that's, how they learned. And so that flexibility that you have, I think, comes from your own experience. It comes from being a kid who was very aware as a young person and wasn't always met where you were.
Yes. I also am finding that we are swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction. Creative
Interesting.
children are also being taught your creativity is truth, yes, but you also need to understand what is consumable and what technique is. We are all made perfect in the way that we're made, but we're also growing. We're not a stone, we're a tree. And a lot of younger artists don't want to do the work of learning the old ways of artistry, of different techniques, because it's hard, because it's not who they are, because it's only more tools to use in your art. Whether you use it or you don't, you still need to do it. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's almost a bubble now being surrounded by creatives where you don't know your art is true. Wait, yes, but add to it, and is it consumable? Because it's also a business. And those pieces of being an artist are generally compartmentalized instead of fused together as this is what art is. The Japanese do it great with ikigai. Is it your passion? Is there a need? And do you have the talent? Then it is your purpose. You'll be happy. But if you only have the passion and you don't have the talent and technique,
Yeah.
you're going to be sad. If people don't want you, you're going to be sad. And that's something nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
The American dream is, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to be a performer. But what if no one wants you? That
Right.
is a hard conversation to have. No one wants you the way you want to be wanted.
Yes.
They could
Yes.
want you in another way.
Yes.
If you look at your technique and your talent and what you have, like a lot of singers, they want to belt and scream. But what if they have a different kind of voice? What if they sound like Alanis Morissette? Shoot, it's unique. It's be uniquely you with your talents, but study lots of ways, learn what is consumable, and then that is perfect artistry.
Well, I think any master of an art or discipline will tell you you have to learn the rules so you know exactly how to break them. You can't just go in there
Exactly.
like a bull in a china shop and be like, I'm breaking all this shit because it's chaos. I mean, these are disciplines, right? Art is a discipline. Dance is a discipline. Writing is a discipline. There are rules and frames that go along with it. And yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want, but don't be sad when when nobody wants it. Like,
Right.
agreed. But at the same time, just on the flip side, you also shouldn't have to be pigeonholed. There are
You
ways to kind of open up. Um, in the writing world, there's a lot of people who've built sort of their own little self-publishing universe. They have their readers, they have their brand, they have their stuff they churn out, they have a system, and it's not for everybody. They know exactly who their people are, and they focus on that. And I think that's the best use. As a creative person, you don't want to think. Nobody wants to think, oh, I'm not for people. They don't like me. You take it so personally. But actually, as a marketing person, I can tell you one of the most valuable pieces of information you can get is who doesn't want me, because
mm,
you're wasted. Like, don't waste your time and energy on that. Like, refocus, figure out who actually does want you, because somebody does. In a world of 8 billion people, somebody wants what you have to offer. And knowing who doesn't want you helps you clarify who does, and then you can focus your energies there. But I completely agree with that. I mean, I do think more what I was talking about was the interior life and the emotional capacity of people who are different and who
mm.
do their best to fit in and work within certain systems, but who are often damaged by those systems because they aren't built to accommodate innovation or uniqueness or any of that kind of stuff. And any kind of institutionalized thing, I think, does that, whether it's publishing or theater or whatever. They have they've worked out what they believe is their formula for making a lot of money. And if you stray or you threaten any of that just by being a little deviant or weird, then they're just not going to want you. That doesn't mean, like, those are the gatekeepers. Just because the gatekeepers don't want you doesn't mean that you don't have an audience out there somewhere. And thanks to the internet, we have the ability to find those people on our
Mhm.
own much more easily than we did in the past. Let's switch up a little bit because I want to talk about your spirituality and your practices around that, which are also very much rooted in your creative way of being. And I'll be very frank and tell you that I'm skeptical of everything, but I
Good.
also have enormous amount of respect for the people who practice these arts. And if it works for them, if they have a thing then that works for them, that's great, and I respect it. I've tried for many years to open myself up, and you know me, right? I'm a very head first person, which is not the best for this kind of thing. But yeah, I've never had like authentic occult experiences, even with putting myself in those situations. But you, on the other hand, have been this way. You've been open, you've been channeling, you've been doing this stuff your whole life. And now you actually teach. You actually teach these things. Where did that come in? And how did your spiritual evolution from childhood to now make it possible for you to live this particular life? Because I know there are a lot of people who would love also to have that kind of avenue open to them where they've embraced their gifts, they have a passion for metaphysics or for any of these kinds of occult practices, and they would love to be the kind of person that goes out there and helps other people to do that too. So where did that all develop?
So I was born psychic. The kind of medium I am is what's called a dark medium. We are greatly discouraged because it's considered evil, and we do live in a Christian oppressive white narrative
Do we?
culture.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Um, so being raised a big chunk of my life in Hawaii, the spirits of the land are incorporated into your life. Like
Mm.
it's everybody talks about it. It's just integrated. My older sister saw when I was very little me looking into the dark and talking to things that were scary. My older sister is also psychic. She is a death medium, which is what you see on TV, the psychic mediums who talk to the human dead.
Yeah.
I'm not a death medium, although I can if they push hard. Because I talk to the things that people are afraid of in the dark, because that was the kind of psychic I was, it was again greatly discouraged. And with most kids, those abilities waned and got weaker because they were discouraged. Just like if you take a child during their nervous system formative years and you put them in a closet where they can't see light, they become blind. It's the same thing with those who have other kinds of senses. If they're not encouraged, they go blind, they go numb, or if they're stifled. I went through a near death experience where I was a victim of an attempted homicide
Oh my
when
God.
I was 21. And it was so horrifying that my hair actually went white for about 4 years. I lost all pigment in my hair from the trauma.
Oh my
And
God.
it was actually a therapist that I thought I was losing my mind because the sight came back. And I didn't remember it as a child. I was 6. I don't remember anything. My sister explained to me what was happening, and she again said, don't look, don't. My therapist explained to me that when I went through that, the filter that most humans have broke. And that's why I'm able to communicate with the things that people are afraid of. Now, with that, I still practice the old ways. Spiritually, I still practice Neolithic traditions from Hawaii, witchcraft from Southern Europe and from parts of Africa, which then became a perfect molding and ended up giving me my specialty in the craft, which is as an exorcist. Because I can see the creatures and interact with the creatures that people are afraid of. like a zookeeper. Like, wouldn't you want someone who can see them if you're going to get rid of them instead of just throw stuff at it?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you know that I love learning and I love just gobbling up information. So I didn't come into this just from, oh, I was born psychic and this was my faith. Although a lot of authors and a lot of teachers, that's what they're going from. I also study and read and study and study and study in order to be qualified to teach various forms of religion, of the craft. And I honestly hate TikTok because it's watering down the craft by saying, oh, if you don't have this, just get a white candle and it incorporates all the colors. Well, what you're doing is culturally erasure because you need convenience.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it was passed down to do it this way for thousands of years. And you just want a quick fix and you don't want to do the cultural work and you don't want to study, and you are contributing, those people are contributing to cultural erasure by trying to make it more palatable. And frankly, the spells don't work because it's not how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
I'm all for skepticism, Q, all for it. I believe in repeatable outcomes. If you can't repeat it, it's not working.
Hmm. So when you say things that people are afraid of, what are we talking about here?
Okay, most people use the word demon, but I don't care for that word because it's a catch all for anything that is not an angel. There is a spiritual ecosystem of creatures that maybe the normies, can't experience visually or auditorily or even cognitively, but our instinct, what the psychic part of ourselves, that instinct, that primal part, and everybody's so focused on, oh, my higher self, fuck higher self. What about our instinctual self? If you go to a waterfall, it's not water, it's not foliage. There's something more here that is affecting us. There's something more. And there are spirits in nature, there are spirits that you can upset. And since the beginning of time, we have been spiritual people before we've been agregarian people. We have lost the brilliance of connecting to entities that made us so progressive by instead encouraging brutality instead of savagery. The savagery that connects us to all spirits. People like me were hunted down and killed, which is why there's not so many of us left in the gene pool. The ones who go outside and can see the creatures that connect to you and make you feel alive when you see a waterfall, those creatures, I see those.
Hmm.
And the ones that cause sleep paralysis, the ones that cause busyness without action. And I study because there's so much folklore to digest and figure out and learn to understand why certain creatures act the way they do and what they want or why they behave the way they do. Some are parasitic, some are predatorial, and some are passive. But we humans have a tendency to be very egotistical and
Mm-hmm.
think that any spirit that walks into your house is out to get you, and maybe it's just passing through.
Hmm. That is a good point, actually. I think a lot of people have this belief in a spirit world, and it's not even like some of it is actually baked into traditional religion as well, right? Like you said, but they often get like I grew up with this concept of demons and all of that kind of influence. I know in Islam, where I spent 20 years, there's this idea of jinn, which are,
Mm-hmm.
they're not human, but they're all around us. They live among us. What was your religious upbringing? Did you have a religious upbringing?
Yes. So my family just called it the old ways. They didn't
Oh,
use, yeah, they didn't use words, but we also never used the word witchcraft.
mm,
There are words you just didn't use. You knew what you were doing, but we didn't say it. Why? Because that tradition's also passed down in a way of survival. You just don't say it. The old Hawaiian ways, the old German ways, the old Italian ways, all Neolithic traditions are very similar
mm,
in those old ways. My faith is called Benedicaria, which is a creolized religion where you take the old ways, the old Italian ways called La Vecchia Religione, and you creolize or you add in your ethnic or cultural beliefs.
Ah,
So it's not, every individual is going to be slightly different, which is a really cool, I would say it's a really cool religion because it's mine, but
no, I like
it's
it. I like that it's flexible enough to accommodate everybody's weirdness.
right. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of Christian Benedicarians, which is what you see in Google. If you Google Benedicaria, it says it's creolized with Christianity, but that's not true. It's creolized. It says that because it comes from Italy, which is highly Christian, right? But it can be any faith. So you can creolize Shinto, you can creolize the Ifa from Yoruba, you can creolize Voodoo, you can creolize Native American, you can creolize Islam, you can add because more is better when it comes to spirituality. Not
Huh.
yeah, you don't have to cut it out. You can have both. And I like to think that I'm an omnist, that I believe that the Christian God exists and these other gods exist. I am very faithful and again, don't pretend to know why things are the way they are. I can only acknowledge what I observe almost scientifically and then creatively try to come up with ways to cope in, again, this weak meat sack that we're wandering around in.
That's so great. I spent many, many years doing interfaith work and have had a lot of exposure to different belief systems and practices and theologies and religions. And I also hesitate to cut any of it out, right?
Mm.
I think everything here that people are believing in, it exists for a reason. But the one thing, it's so interesting that this is your take on spirituality, because in my experience, most people that consider themselves spiritual are way more interested in defining themselves by what they are not than what they are. And for you to say, the more is better is actually a pretty revolutionary idea, I think. And I like it. I think it's a great idea. I don't think, I came to this conclusion a while back. Everything has to fit. Like, I'm not willing to ignore any section or any piece of reality to preserve my beliefs. I would rather believe nothing than ignore reality in any facet. And so all of this has to fit. It's like a big puzzle, right? All of these pieces have to fit at some point, and they exist for a reason. And I think the thing that prevents us from having that mentality that you're talking about is just fear. It's ego-driven fear, which is saying that I need to have the one and only right answer. Otherwise, my life is meaningless, and or I want to control the outcomes of what happens when I die. And none of us have that. None of us are in control. None of us are God or whatever you want to call it. And so this idea that everything needs to come into this, everything is here and it all has to fit. And if it's not making sense, then that's because you, as a human being, with a very limited understanding of the universe, are trying to make sense of it in a way that works for you. It's not
Mhm.
because it's true. It's not because your point of view is true. And I like that idea. And I actually think that this is true of all things, not just spirituality, any subject. You can't just turn around and say, well, I'm right. I am the rightest right person in the world. And in order to believe that I'm right, I have to pretend like all of this stuff is just false, not true. All these people who believe this one thing are evil or bad or just flat wrong and stupid. That's crap. That's intellectual laziness right there. There's a reason why millions of people believe a certain thing. That doesn't mean they're right 100%, but it's a piece of understanding. It's a piece of knowledge. So like for you, when you talk, like when your students come to you for these kinds of things, do you feel like they have to work through those conflicts? Do you feel like people are able to embrace this idea of more is better? when it comes to spirituality? Or do you think people are really, um, I guess what I'm asking is, do a lot of people come to you seeking a single answer, a right answer? They want to be, they have in their heads, this is what I want to believe, and they come to you. Or do you think they come to you with a, wide open and say, show me what it is, and if it's right for me to adopt this, or if it's right for me to understand this, or if I have these experiences, then that's how it should be, and if I don't, that is also how it should be.
So my school, Bear Bridge Academy of Witchcraft and Psychic Development, we don't indoctrinate and we're not one religion. We just teach. So we have courses on Wicca, which is the modern and very palatable version of witchcraft. I said that with a little disdain in my voice. Sorry, listeners. I have my opinions about that religion and other pagan religions where they try to control others again. I take major issue with faiths that try to oppress even when they give the impression that they are open. But we offer lots of different faiths at the school, and it's more about the practice. I don't believe in editing, and we've actually gotten a lot of heat from the craft community because we also teach dark witchcraft. We teach what's considered evil. But I do not believe in book burning. I don't believe in editing for people's comfort. That's not what education is, and that's not what culture is, and it's not what creativity is. You teach it the way it's been passed down, and we keep it going. If it's not for you, don't take class. Mind your own. Drink your water. Mind your own business. I saw that on on social media today. It was
That's
like, this
amazing.
is appropriate. Drink your water. Mind your business. But so at the school, we teach everything from Slavic witchcraft, which can be very dark, very dangerous, to Asian witchcraft. We have Egyptian shamanism. We have Wicca, as I said. We have Shinto. We have Hawaiian spirituality. So I'm not the only teacher. We have teachers all over the country. And the school is the fastest and largest growing school in metaphysics in the country. We started with 8 students at the end of 2021, and now we're at 800.
Wow.
Yeah, in
All
two
right.
years. Yeah. And with that, we just want to keep offering different ideologies so that people can decide for themselves
Mm.
without editing or without indoctrinating. We are not a school that says you need to be a pagan to do witchcraft. We have Christians, we have people who are Islamic, who are Jewish, who also practice those ways. And again, in their home, who is to tell them what they can and cannot do? Our job is to educate.
I like that. I think that is a perfectly reasonable response. And I think that because I think so much of the damage that happens in spiritual circles happen because of people who say, this is not for me, or I'm struggling to accept this. And then you turn around and you get ostracized because there's such a powerful desire to force conformity so that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't cause you to live in that tension of, I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, this is a very human thing. Like, we want other people to just affirm us in every aspect of our lives, not the least of which is spirituality, which is such an esoteric thing. And it feels insecure for a lot of people at different points in their life. So I like that a lot. I like that idea of giving people the knowledge and allowing them to figure out how to integrate it into their lives.
I think it's similar when you're talking about students who are learning how to be creative. It's a similar problem with students or all humans who are learning about their spirituality is being stifled and controlled
Yeah.
to fit into a box instead of learn everything and then who are you? And that's why in the old ways they were the same. Creativity and spirituality were the same because the end answer is the same. How do you show up for other people? It's the same thing whether it's in spirituality or whether you're creating for consumption. How do you show up for others? Because spirituality is about connection. That's the point.
Yes.
And creativity, the arts, is to teach us how to stay connected.
I think that there are a lot of people who are not comfortable with that for whatever reason. And I think that religion is very much comforting to people because they don't want to take ownership over their own spirituality, and or they feel like they need somebody to tell them what, you know, what's what. They're afraid of finding out the truth or finding out not maybe finding out nothing. I was this kid also like you who I had my own ways of viewing the world. I had whatever, and I spent a lot of my youth being conflicted and having this cognitive dissonance because who I was, what I am as a person was so diametrically opposed to the teachings and the environment in which I was indoctrinated. And I think for a lot of people, I think for many, 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 maybe even most people, they're okay living within a very specific framework, right? And like having certain things dictated to them. They're not fuck around and find out people. And I am. And I'm okay. I'm not afraid of like fucking around and finding out, especially in the realm of spirituality, which is my right as a human being. Like if you're a human being on this earth, that is like one of the things, maybe the most important thing that makes you human, creativity being the other. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have a right. And I think we should protect that right at all costs to explore what that is. But I also think I completely understand like that people are in different stages of their spirituality. I think you have to have some level of maturity, spiritual maturity, which is a very different thing from physical, mental, and emotional maturity. But a spiritual maturity to be able to say, I've looked around, I've experienced all these things. What I need can't be found over here. And I'm going to take it upon myself. I'm going to take my personal responsibility and go and I'm going to seek what is true and what makes sense. And it's a very scary thing to come to that point because you realize you're kind of on your own. It almost feels like you're lonely, right? Like it's a very lonely thing to do, to come to that point where you're just like, nobody is going to be able to help me with this. I'm going to have to go on and yeah, maybe there's other, like you can find community with people who are also kind of on their journey, but
Yes.
no one is ever going to completely understand me and what I'm going through and what I see and feel and relate to, and especially not in my spirit, my interior life and my spirituality. And that I think that that's why a lot of people actually reject any of these different ways of believing, because it does require personal responsibility to come and say all these things that I've believed or that I've practiced my whole life, they're not working for me anymore. And at the same time, I recognize that I have a legitimate, innate spiritual self that needs to be nurtured. And so now I can't be happy unless I go out and figure out what that is about and how to nurture that. Kudos to people who are doing that. I've set on that journey myself quite a while ago, and I'm still discovering, and it's wonderful, but it is scary. It is. So, what advice would you give to people, whether they are creatives or whether they're on this looking for a new spiritual, looking for spiritual answers or on that path, about how to have the courage that you need to strike out, to take the risks, to be weird when it's necessary, to break rules once you realize what they are and that they're not working for you? Where does that fortitude come from? Because I know many people that have lived and died in a box, and I don't want to be that person. And I know a lot of creative people don't want to be that person either.
Wow, what a heavy and difficult question to answer.
You're welcome.
The pressure. Well, I don't pretend to be any kind of guru or prophet that has the answer to such a profound question, but I can give a little bit of advice,
Right.
both with creativity, the arts, and with spirituality. You know how, I'm taking a left turn, you know how when you go to complain to someone, there are those who just immediately want to fix you?
For sure.
Okay, so creatives and those of us who are finding your spirituality, two pieces of advice. One, walk away from those people. You're not broken. You need people around you that are there to listen and support, not fix. You're going to be on your own in both cases, figuring
Mm.
out what is authentic in your art and what is authentic in your spirituality. And the second piece is make sure it's authentic. You mentioned earlier how we need a sense of validation and to be right or to have that sense of belonging. When it comes to spirituality, the divine knows when you're faking it. I mean, if we just accept that there is the divine,
Mm-hmm.
if you're on Facebook bragging about how you can talk to God and God really likes it when you eat Doritos on your couch and get high, that doesn't
Wait,
sound authentic
where
to
do I
me.
sign up for this religion?
It doesn't sound authentic to me. It sounds like you just need to be on a platform to brag and have a sense of being validated. Like you got to you want to brag about something, you want to be, it's okay for you to sit on your couch and eat Doritos and get high. I'm just going to call it spirituality. Dude, the fact that you're bragging means that it's not divine anymore. It's a relationship between you and the divine. It's the need to brag about it. Guess what? They know you're faking it.
Mm.
They know that it's not real because you know it's not real. Find the authenticity in your faith, which is why you said earlier, I'm skeptical. And I said, good. I like that. If it doesn't feel real, don't do it.
Yeah, that's a great rule of thumb. It
You know
is.
how many people in witchcraft are like, I want to connect to Lilith or I want to connect to Hecate. And they get all this stuff and they build the altar and they're like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Just like with Christianity. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm supposed to do. Why are you doing it then? If it
Right.
doesn't feel right, why are you doing it? Keep searching. I know it's hard, but you know what? No one ever said this existence is easy. It's okay. Put it down.
Yeah.
Stop wasting time. Go find out what feels right. If what feels right is you praise a deity that is so archaic, nobody heard of it, but it feels authentic to you, then guess what? That's right. That
Yeah.
is the divine. And that is also how art works.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And it's why it's so hard for people to grasp why, like this, like the Andre 3000 album that just came out, right? Here, do you know about this? He's
I
like this
don't tell me.
rapper. Okay, no,
Oh,
he's like this rapper. He's an amazing rapper. He's a gifted rapper, but he's like he's middle aged now, and he just released this album, and it's like weird new agey flute music. And I love it. Like I'm down with this music, but I also like smooth jazz, so I can't be trusted. Anyway, like people are like really tripped up about this. Like they can't understand. And he gave an interview, like it was very funny at GQ where he was talking about, like I'm 38, 48. He's like, I can't remember. He's like, you know, it doesn't feel authentic to rap right now. Like, what am I going to rap about? Going and getting a colonoscopy? Like he was very self-aware, right? About his authenticity, about what, but like people don't like that. Like it wigs them out. Like, what? Why are you doing something different? And that's because people like to turn art into a commodity and artists into commodities. But the artist, and also to your point, the spiritual seeker, their job is actually to abandon things that don't work for them anymore and seek what's
mhm.
new, because that is it's artistic and spiritual evolution. It's something you're never ever supposed to be just in one place forever. And a lot of artists who have, like, I have an enormous amount of respect for artists who are just like, yeah, you know what, I think I'm gonna go try something completely off the wall. And then everybody freaks out and they're like, why? And you're just like, well, the artist is just like, well, this is what I'm called to do. This is what I want to do. And like, hell yeah, that's what art is, my friend. And we just have weird values in our society about like what people who earn their living as artists are allowed to do and be. But the point is, like, that's your job. Like, that's your job as a sentient, intelligent, emotionally complex, developed human, as an adult human, is to go and keep growing, keep changing, keep evolving over time. And if it's not working for you, that is a sign. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Like a lot of religious communities or a lot of artists or whatever, they'll brand you a heretic. What, you don't want to do this anymore, or you have a different take or whatever. They don't like it. They like what they're comfortable with. But art is not about comfort. And
It's
frankly, I
this
don't think neither is spirituality.
it's the same as the seasons. We can't control them and they change. And we naturally change. The old ways was all about the seasons. You have the seasons of your growth as a person, and you're not the same as you were yesterday. Everything's changing. We have one chunk of life. If we just take a year, one chunk of the year feels the same, and then it shifts and it becomes something different. We as people want to control the seasons of artists and the seasons of spirituality and not let it move to the next season. We need to, because that is the natural way of things.
Yes, there's a point where you let things go, where you give things up, where you stop trying to struggle. And I feel like I got caught for many years in that kind of, this isn't working for me. It must be me. I need to try much harder. I need to discipline myself more. You really, I think it's a good idea. Like if you commit yourself to something, you should definitely commit yourself to it and give it the best shot that you can. But if it's still not working for you after all that, it's not about you. It's not you. It really isn't. And you can trust yourself on that. Religion likes to undermine our trust in ourselves by trying to tell us that we can't trust ourselves and that left to our own devices, we're going to turn into these, evil whatevers. And I don't think that's true. I think we inherently, naturally know what is good and true and right.
I
I'm
think
sure
people
many,
do that. I don't think religion does it. I think people do it to each other. I think
yeah, okay.
religion are is beautiful. All of them are just so fascinating, and how they remind us how to be better or connect or what have you. I think they're all amazing. But humans are mean,
Yeah.
and it's because of spirituality and creativity that it's the medication to stop the meanness.
Hmm. Well, I'll take some of that.
Me too.
Definitely. Well, Aly, this has been like we're way over time, but I couldn't stop because you're so interesting. Um, I hope you'll come back to talk to me another time.
Oh my God, I
And
would love that.
yay! Like honestly, this is the first extended time. Like we always have little conversations in between classes or whatever, but this has been such a great conversation, and I could definitely talk to you for much longer. But do come back, and I will make sure that in the show notes I put links to all of your stuff so people can find you on the internet, and everybody has to be nice to Aly because I will personally kick your ass if I find out you're mean to him on the internet. Damn people. But yeah, thank you so much. This is I'm coming away from this conversation feeling inspired, and also like I think you said a couple things in there that were very provocative for me, and I like that. I do. I'm going to
Mm.
stew on them for a while. It's awesome.
Oh wow, thank you. I'm just grateful that you have a platform for me to talk about a few things that are kind of taboo, being a creative that was objectified, and to talk about old ways which are still villainized to this day. By allowing a platform for that, I hope that we hit one listener, maybe more, but at least one with listener who feels
Let's have
seen.
more ambition than that, please.
Yes, but just that someone feels seen, that
Yeah.
they're not alone in their struggle and journey in these areas.
Well, I think this is amazing, and I actually hope the same thing because these are things that I think about all the time, and for some reason, we don't talk about them that often.
Mm-mm.
And I guess people just assume that these are really just deeply personal things, or they've become so institutionalized that people don't want to talk about them because they don't want to say the wrong thing or whatever. But I value a conversation partner who is willing to test limits and really explore ideas and feelings as opposed to keeping it too intellectual, too up here in the head. Because despite being that person, I actually am very heart centered, and
Mm.
I think that's why I like you so much. You resonate with me as a human. I love it. I think you're amazing.
I think you're amazing. I was drawn to your spirit the moment I met you, and I'm so glad that we've started to build a friendship.
Yay, Mutual Admiration Society.
Yeah.
Okay.